Tonight we're going to delve into the tricky business of warning folks to fire danger. Now that might not be triggering to you if you live in the middle of a city or a town, but for those of you who live near or in our beautiful woods, that might put you on edge. And you're certainly not alone. Mapping the fire danger, that's our big story tonight. Oregon recently released a draft of a map that shows wildfire risk for every single piece of property in the state. And if that sounds familiar, well, it should. This is the second time the state has tried this. Back in 2022, a similar map was released, and a lot of folks with property suddenly deemed in the fire danger zone, well, they hated it, and understandably. The state then pulled the maps back within a matter of weeks. Now officials are hoping the second time is the charm. Environmental reporter Cale Williams has our story.
They say that everything old becomes new again. And that certainly seems to be the case with Oregon's wildfire risk maps. Last week, the state dropped its latest draft of a map that shows the level of risk for every piece of property in the state.
We are facing more fires within that period.
Andy McAvoy is a research assistant at the Oregon State College of Forestry. And he was one of dozens of people who helped formulate the most recent draft.
This is all aimed at protecting homes, property, and lives from future wildfire disasters.
But to understand why this is such a big deal, you've got to rewind a couple years to 2022. That's when the state released the first version of the map and immediately kicked up a firestorm of controversy. People were angry at what seemed like arbitrary classifications of their property. Here's what then State Representative Lily Morgan of Grants Pass told KGW at the time.
Where you have properties that have manicured landscaping, flat lands that is all green and is listed as extreme, where across the street you have vegetation that is not irrigated and clearly dry brush and it's not listed as extreme.
Residents were also worried about changes to their insurance, as one homeowner told us in a voicemail.
The insurance company, which happens to be Travelers, let me know that they were not going to be renewing because of the designation of extreme wildfire. This is going to cause a huge issue for property owners, both on the homeowner side as well as the business side.
The reaction to the first map was intense enough that the state rescinded it within a few weeks. So I asked McAvoy what that whole process was like.
Well, it was frustrating, is what it was. But I also really understood why people were confused and frustrated. The fact and the manner in which the map and the information related to the map was sort of just dumped at their doorstep because of really tight timelines that we couldn't change. That's really frustrating.
The 2 years since have given the state some time to slow down and think about how to change the map. The original map had 5 levels of risk, all the way from no risk up to extreme. That's been pared down to 3. Low risk, seen here in green, moderate risk in purple, and high risk, shown in orange. McAvoy said they also changed the way they classified some pasture lands, which lowered the risk level on nearly 2 million acres. And they altered the classifications for irrigated cropland, which knocked some 20,000 tax lots out of the highest risk category. And since 2022, Oregon passed Senate Bill 82.
And that specifically prohibits insurers in Oregon from using this wildfire hazard map to inform rating decisions.
These maps aren't just informative, though. Properties that are both in the high-risk category and also in the wildland-urban interface, seen here in darker orange, will soon be subject to stricter regulation. Property owners there will likely have to do more to create defensible space around their homes. And new construction in those areas could be subject to tougher building codes. So for the last month, McAvoy and other folks from state agencies have been traveling around the state. They've hosted open houses in places like Grants Pass, Klamath Falls, and LeGrand to give folks a preview of the maps and address their concerns.
I think they were really well received. There's still plenty of opposition. There's still plenty of confusion. But those open houses were a great opportunity for us to begin to answer those questions.
Now, there will still be some situations that might seem counterintuitive, like when adjacent homes are at different risk levels. But McAvoy said the science behind the thresholds for each risk category, climate, weather, topography, and vegetation, is sound.
There are going to be situations where neighbors fall just on either side of those thresholds, right? So just on the other side, one neighbor is going to be just above the high hazard threshold and one's going to be just below.
And while McAvoy acknowledged that not everyone will be happy with the maps or with facing the prospect of new regulations, climate change has altered the way fires burn in Oregon. And so the state has to change the way it responds to fires.
We are facing a longer fire season. We are facing more fires within that period of time, fires in new places. We are facing unprecedented fuel conditions. So the context in which we're living and fighting fire is all changing. And we have to adapt to that as a state.
Cale's with me now, and so you talked about these regulations. What could they look like?
Well, they're still in draft form. The state is still working on them, but we get a little bit of a hint from California, where they just instituted some regulations like this in South Lake Tahoe. These are to create defensible space around your home, and so in South Lake Tahoe, 5 feet, you can't have any combustible material. So that's things like bark mulch, patio furniture, up to and including things like hot tubs. So it could be a bigger deal for some folks than others. And they're talking about putting in some stricter building codes. So this will, potentially have ramifications for what kind of materials are used in new construction. But they won't be retroactive. So you won't have to change anything that's already there, just for new stuff.
Okay, and the idea is when fire sweeps through, it'd be harder for your house to catch on fire.
Yeah, they talk about these things called ember showers, where,
Sure.
when you have strong winds, you're getting all these embers blowing in. If you've got bark mulch right up against your house, you've got wood siding, it goes right up. But, if you've just got gravel around there, hopefully those embers grow up.
Yeah, or a shingle roof, for example, cedar shingles. When would this be instituted?
So we're in the midst of a comment period right now. It goes to August 18th, and that's when anybody, including you, can weigh in on what you think about these maps, whether you think they're good enough, there's things that need to be improved. After that point, they're going to take all this feedback, try to incorporate some changes that they think to make, which, will include feedback from county commissioners. At that point, it will go to the Board of Forestry. They'll finalize the maps, and that's when they'll send out letters to the folks who will be subject to these regulations. And those folks, they get those letters, they don't agree with them, they will have a chance to appeal.
Wow, okay, so quite a process going through this.
Yeah, but they're hoping to get it done by, sometime this fall.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you, Cale. Appreciate that.
Sure thing.